Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast, episode 135.
Welcome to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast with your host, Jack Mountain Bushcraft School founder and Master Maine Guide, Tim Smith.
I'm your host, Tim Smith. I'm a registered Master Maine Guide and have been a full-time outdoor instructor and guide since founding the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School in 1999. We help people become more skilled, more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more confident in the natural world through our bushcraft and guide training semester programs and multi-week canoe and snowshoe expeditions. You can check out the show notes to all of our podcasts at blog.jackmtn.com. If you're interested in learning more about our college-accredited and GI Bill-approved programs, visit the Jack Mountain Bushcraft School on the web at jackmtn.com. And check out our online network and digital learning academy at bushcraftschool.com. Hello and welcome back to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. It is January 23rd when we're recording this, and I am joined in the studio, and we legitimately have like a podcast studio now. It's a piece of software, but it says the JMB podcast studio, and I'm joined in the studio by Paul Sveum, longtime guest, has been on the podcast a number of times. How are we doing today, Paul?
Hey man, I'm great. And I was actually thinking about it this morning. You were kind of dropping the numbers here, 135th podcast, which is pretty awesome. And I was doing the thinking this morning that I have been listening to you talk. I'm just going, we have known each other for 20 years.
Wow.
That just kind of stuck up on me. I'm like, man, that's a long time, man. That's a long time.
It's definitely a long time. So episode 135 of the podcast, year 26 for the school. Now I'm starting to feel really old. I'm gonna go pop a Geritol. I'll be right back. I don't even know if that's even a thing anymore. Do they still have that?
I feel like you just dropped like Vanna White's name, where there's going to be a select audience that knows who you're talking about.
If you're younger than registering for the AARP, Geritol was like the multivitamin that all the old people took back in like the 80s. So it was
commercial. I think
what's that?
Publishers Clearinghouse commercial with not Wilford Brimley. Who was
Ed McMahon?
McMahon, yep.
Well, we're off to a flying start this morning. So today we want to talk about fly fishing programs in 2025 and what the latest fly fishing industry news is all about. So how long has it been? Has it been 10 years that we've been doing the fly fishing programs? It's got to be close by now.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a number I didn't do the metrics on this morning. But yeah, we've been running fly fishing programs for, I'm 40 something. And that would have been, probably 10, 11 years ago.
10's a nice round number.
I like it.
Yeah.
And so this would mark our 5th season of the current offerings that we're going to be talking about today, which is really exciting. 5th year anniversary. I always say in a small business, if you can make it a few years, 3 or 4 years, you're doing all right. So happy to be in year 5 here.
Yeah, that's great. So what do we have? What do we have on the go for this year? What are we looking at for, say, spring fishing programs?
Yeah, so this spring, starting late May, we're going to be, like I said, running our 5th year of our Introduction to Fly Fishing Weekend. And that's a 2.5-day program up at the Jack Mountain campus in Ashland. And we'll talk more about kind of what that weekend looks like later. But that kicks off our fly fishing season this year. We have 2 beginner classes on the schedule. Following that, I have 3 weeks of private fly fishing expedition opportunities available for anybody. One of those weeks is currently booked. I just booked a week-long fly fishing trip with a group of dudes who want to do the Allagash. So we're going to be fly fishing and canoeing the Allagash in early June. I still have 2 more spaces for fly fishing and canoeing expeditions.
That'll be a great trip. there won't be any lonely bugs. You guys will be up there to feed all those hungry bugs that are out in early June up there.
It's true. It wouldn't be a summer if I didn't have the black fly pox. At
It's
least,
funny though, like I've been on the Allagash all seasons, and even if the bugs are really bad, unless you get that day where it's like rainy with no wind, usually during the day it's no big deal. You just got to have a decent tent that once sun starts to set, you can go crawl in there and get away from them. But that time of year is like it's light out till like 9:30, so and then light again at like before 5. So you'll probably get plenty of hours in during the day where you'll want to be in the tent sleeping it off at night.
well, it's true, man. And I was talking to a buddy down here the other day about cold weather acclimatization, where, if you live in a heated home and you go outdoors this time of year, where we're in this really cold week right now where, I have to put my slippers on in the morning. It feels really cold when you go from a hot climate to a really cold climate. And it's kind of the same in the summer with bugs, where if you go from house to car to office to grocery store to car to home, you're not really in the bugs very much. And then when you go out in it, it's just this kind of assault to your humanity. But once you're outdoors for a day, even or a day and a half, you get kind of used to it. Where no one ever really likes being surrounded by 8 trillion black flies or mosquitoes. But I'm not just saying, it's not just lip service. You get used to it. After a day, it just kind of becomes background noise, and you're kind of constantly swatting at your head and putting on bug dope. But it's really not that big of a deal. You get
Yeah, I think with the Allagash too, there's a couple of spots like you're definitely going to want to fish, but don't camp there. Years ago, I don't know, 15 years ago, we had a woman who was camping under a bug net, and at this one campsite known for bad black fly activity. And she went to bed. The bug net wasn't optimal, and when she woke up, literally unrecognizable, had a big allergic reaction to so many bug bites that I had to drive her out to the medical clinic in Ashland, and she got a steroid shot. And she was fine. And, the upside of it was she had tons of energy and was like, oh, do you need any more firewood cut or anything like that? So, my brain recognizes that and says, maybe we should all get steroid shots before we go out for a week-long trip.
out Jack came out like Goldblum after the fly versus before he goes into that machine that fuses him into a fly.
Yeah, exactly. That was actually, that was a remake. There's an older version of that. I don't know if anybody's interested in that, but my son is in film school, so I'm often notified when there are earlier versions or such. So,
Well, I love it. I'll tell you, this will be the first of probably 50 references to Wicked. I've got 2 girls and my wife. They're big fans of the new Wicked movie, and Jeff Goldblum, man, he's never done a bad movie. Like, he's awesome in Wicked. He plays the Great Wizard of Oz, and plus, I think he would just be a fun dude to hang out with. Honestly,
I've heard talk of the Wicked movie. Now, can you confirm that it's just like a cultural history of New England, or is it something about something else?
no comment. I thought it was about the Chick-fil-A franchise.
Ugh,
Chick-fil-A.
Wicked.
Wicked. It's wicked. Yeah, it's wicked good.
Yeah.
I've seen it. But yeah, and actually going back to the Allagash trip too, that was chatting with a client from last fall we're going to go out fishing and canoeing this summer on the Allagash. And kind of to your point, Tim, there's a lot of activities where, you can go up to the Allagash, you can put your boats in, you can do the trip, you can fish, you can camp. But this is a pitch on why to hire a guide. And this is something I was talking about with my friend yesterday, because all of him and his buddies would be very capable of doing a trip on their own. But he said, we want to hire you because you know these things. Those campsites where you can camp and maybe get out of the bug just a little bit, or, the stretches of water that are a little bit better for fishing, and where the shuttles pick up and where they drop off and who those shuttle drivers are. So just a little plug in for hiring a guide these days. There's a lot that we know that can make a trip just a little bit better for you. And yeah, camping out of the bugs. If you spend one night getting eaten by bugs, you're going to start wishing you'd brought a guide with you.
Yeah. I'll add specific to the Allagash where the springs are, like the good drinking water, and then you're not drinking smoky boiled water, and you're not drinking the chemicals to purify it. And there's quite a few. I think the last 5 years or so on the Allagash, I bring a 2.5 gallon water jug and I fill it up every couple of days at one of the springs along the way, and then I'm not drinking smoky water. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. No smoky water, no chlorine, no iodine.
Yeah.
Good
There's
stuff.
a whole bunch of new campsites up there too. We'll have to sit down and go over it. One of the things I like to do is and I always recommend this to anybody who's like a guide in training on any of the trips, is to push on ahead of the group a little bit, get out and walk around at each and every campsite so you get a first-hand understanding of what's there, how many tent sites there are, if it's a good loading and unloading place to get in and out of the boats. So then when you're planning your trips, it's not just a campsite, you have first-hand knowledge of, the benefits and the curses of each one. And especially if there's a spring there, that's always optimal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We were chatting about even the St. Croix River south of Vanceboro, because that's a river I've done dozens and dozens of times. I love it. And just being able to say, oh, yeah, we camped at this specific campsite on this specific day at this specific time of the night. I remember throwing this specific fly to rising smallmouth and crushed it and had one of the best, warm water smallmouth fishing moments of my life. Those are the reasons you bring a guide. Because,
Yeah, and the stories, right? I was on the St. Croix last year, and I always tell the story of when you guys were going down, when you put in at camp and paddled all the way to the ocean.
Yeah.
And there's a cove there. I think it's called American Cove.
Yeah.
So I always call that Whiskey Cove now, because the story goes, and you can tell me if I'm telling it correctly, but when you guys were on that long trip, you got there and you found a full bottle of whiskey, like bobbing in a little eddy, and then you guys sat around the fire and drank the whole thing.
It was sunk. And I don't know how, and you're going to question the physics of this. It was sunk on the bottom, and it was that same trip. It was just right after Split Rock. We had gone through some rapids, and we were kind of just floating in a big pool. And I looked down, and I saw like an old boombox radio, the kind we had in like 1991. If you were making it in life, you had like this boombox, and I saw it, and it was in maybe 10 feet of water, and I could see there was an audio cassette tape in it, and I really wanted to know what that canoeist was listening to right before they dumped all their gear and it sank. And so I spent about 10 minutes with my setting pole trying to stab it, and I finally stab it. I get this old boombox up in my canoe. Of course, it releases 2 gallons of, kind of funky, sandy water into my boat. And I pry the tape deck out, and I could just make out the name on this old audio cassette.
Let me guess. Before you tell, I want to guess.
There you go.
If it was from Maine, it was Panama by Van Halen.
It was The Best of Cream.
Ah, great album.
Like, I had respect for that choice. And then I was trying to guesstimate what song they were listening to by seeing how much tape was on either side of the spools, and this is kind of like the comments where if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you're too young. And what I deduced was that they were listening to White Room by Cream when they're over, which is like pretty dramatic. Like that would be right up there with listening to White Rabbit by Jefferson in Airplane.
Yeah.
And the boat is sinking. And then I moved on with life, but it was cool. Yeah.
The St. Croix trip, if there's ever like an aluminum can shortage in the world, going there, you could get a lifetime supply off of the bottom. Like right by the put in, there's just somebody must have just dumped a boat with like 7 coolers full of Bud Light, because there's like 1 million cans on the bottom of that river.
Well, was that with you? We went skin diving after Little Falls, and we're just bringing up like GoPros and tackle boxes and fishing rods and...
No, but that's a good place to do it. I've always partial to a little Allagash story. At the foot of the challenging section of Chase Rapids, there's a big pool called Big Eddy, and it kind of marks the end of the hard rapids. And we had a group there one summer. We were down at the bottom, and there were two guys, and they each had apparently their like 10-year-old son in the bow of their canoe. And one of the guys looks at me and he says, "Hey, I think I was swimming," and they came up. And he says, "Hey, did you guys find a wallet?" He says, "You can keep the cash. There's like $500 in it. I just want the cards." So I'm thinking, oh, wow. So the next year, of course, I bring like a mask and I'm swimming along on the bottom. And the only thing I found that year was it was like an old whiskey bottle that somebody had just duct taped so that it wouldn't shatter, but it was full of river water, not whiskey. Pretty funny story. But I found all sorts of stuff there, like sleeping pads. I found like a crazy creek chair. You always find a couple of spare paddles floating along, and just random bits of gear from people dumping boats.
Yep.
Just about always. I don't think I've ever gone down Chase Rapids and not found some piece of random gear.
Well, we'll get back together after I'm up there in June, and I'll know what I find.
I keep thinking, oh, I'll find a GoPro on the bottom. I've told you the story about the young guy with the GoPro. He had taken, it was the end of 4 weeks, and we were at that little rip just past the oxbow put in on the Aroostook. You come around the corner, there's a big rock there, and we always have lunch at that boat ramp. So it was right after lunch. Everybody's feeling a little slow, and I start to see this. We're waiting on this one boat, and then just gear starts floating around the corner. I was like, oh, here we go. So I had to pull back upstream, and these guys found all their gear. They couldn't find an axe, though, and this kid's GoPro that he had like 3.5 weeks worth of photos on. His whole life's on it. And it's probably like neck deep water. Pretty quick, pretty good rip. So I get out and I'm helping the kid look around for it. And it's getting late. We got about 17 miles to go that day. And I tell him, hey, I'll come back with you in like 2 days and we'll scour the bottom finding it. And I'm thinking there's like a 1 in a million chance we'll find anything. But true to form, 2 days later, pulled down around the corner, and it took us like a half hour, but I found his GoPro, and the battery was still charged, no problems at all. So that was pretty fun time.
Yep. So all of these stories and more could be yours if the price is right.
Just random finding stuff on the bottoms of rivers. So, okay, we've got a couple of classes coming up, couple of trips. What do you think if you were going to give somebody the elevator pitch? Like, why study, fly fishing with you when there is so much content out there, like YouTube channels and whatever? What's the point of doing it in person?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll get to the social media part of fly fishing maybe later on today. But really, I mean, what we do at the fly fishing program at Jack Mountain, all of our programs are taught by, licensed outdoor professionals, which is something to hang your hat on these days. A lot of people like to play the outdoor educator or guide on TV, but really it's something that can only come through time and experience, and in the state of Maine, testing. We're all licensed Maine guides, if not master Maine guides. And our object is to teach long form immersion courses, based on an actual educational philosophy. And our goal is to help you become, proficient, well-rounded fly fishers in a format that, really maximizes your learning dollar. And I think at the end of the day, the combination of all those things make the fly fishing program at Jack Mountain one of a kind in this country.
Yeah, definitely the people playing it on TV. That was me, my short-lived TV career. So I always get a kick out of that. But agreed, Maine, I think outdoorsmanship in Maine and the Maine guide tradition definitely amps up the level of professionalism, whereas there is that testing component. You have to prove that you have the skills in order to get the patch. And that's always been a huge benefit to me. I always have enjoyed the fact that there's that, setting kind of the setting a high bar for people. I like that part of it. But yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And I think thinking about education, the ultimate goal of education is always to be transformational. And I think if you are able to go out to a remote river, fish it, even if you've never been there before, have a good idea of what's in the river and where the fish are going to be holding, and then go out and interact with them, catch a few. That's pretty transformational to me. I think that's a great outcome.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you engage in an educational process, it should be transformational. That's kind of the point of education. It should change your life in a way that you want. Educational philosophy aside, I should add too that where Jack Mountain is located is truly an epic place for fly fishing. I mean, we're situated on the edge of the North Maine Woods, surrounded by hundreds of miles of rivers, 100 flatwater lakes that all boast, year-round cold and warm water fishing. So educational, professional aside, the fun factor is super high. It's a wonderful place to be a fisher, especially a fly fisher in northern Maine. And Jack Mountain campus is just right in the heart of all that fishing.
Yeah, I think I told you the story, but last spring we were out early June doing some poling practice put in at the boat ramp in downtown Masardis, and there was an old guy there, and he caught a 21-inch salmon. Like literally, you could throw a rock from the boat launch. He caught it right there. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So there's still some big fish up there. As you get into fishing, you realize that, especially with the cold water fishing in the rivers, it's very temperature dependent. And it's one of the things you learn about if you go on a course, or even if you just pick up a book. You realize that, the brook trout and the salmon need that colder water to have an optimal life. So as the waters start to heat up late spring, early summer, they're going to go off and find some spring holes, find some colder things around springs, or head up into the lakes and get into the deeper part of the lake to where they can get the temperature where they'll be comfortable. But, there's so many little details like that I think you just get when you are living it and you're out on a course and doing it every day for a couple of days.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why our guided fly fishing trips are offered in June, early June to middle of June. By the end of June, early July, the majority of lakes and rivers, like you said, Tim, up north, the water gets low in the rivers and it gets a little warm for our cold water species. And so you have two choices. You can either venture farther afield and or fish some tailwaters, or just get into fishing for whatever species are available. And in the summer, maybe that's a transition to yellow perch and smallmouth. But that's the beauty of being a nice, well-rounded fly fisher, is that any time of the year you can access fish.
Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. Great. Well, maybe we should plan to talk and do this again in a little bit. Talk a little bit more fishing. But I've got a dog here that's just crying to go out, and you probably heard her in the background. So great talking today, and let's do this again in a little bit.
Cool. Sounds good, Tim.
Okay, have a good one.
All right, we'll see ya.
You have been listening to the Jack Mountain Bushcraft Podcast. For more information on our professional wilderness guide training programs that are college accredited and GI Bill approved, visit us on the web at jackmtn.com.